Hello, entrepreneurs. We are here today to talk to you about how you don't have to be first with your new technology. You just have to be the best.
Wait, what?
That's true.
Hey everybody, I'm Becky Kilimnik.
Hi, I'm Diana Doty.
Together, we have helped dozens of entrepreneurs just like you raise millions of dollars in funding. And we are here to help you know how to do just the same thing for your own business.
So let's take some steps today to get your startup from the ground into orbit.
I'm sure you've heard this myth that in the entrepreneurial world, if you are going to come up with a disruptive technology, you have to be first. You have to be first. You can't be second. And the truth is that's really not the case because there's a lot of advantages to not being first. The reason we want to drive this point home is maybe you have an idea that you've come up with and you're like, oh no, somebody just did it already. Well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You just need to do it better. And the reason why you have the advantage of being second or even third is that first guy that came out with that technology, they had to do all of the legwork on educating their customer and explaining to people what this was in the first place. I mean, do you remember when the iPad came out and everyone was like, what the hell am I going to do with that?
Or even worse, the iPod.
Why do I need this? I've got my CD player, my boombox.
I have 20 years worth of music on tape stored up. What am I going to do with this tiny little thing?
And now we can't imagine not having music on our phones.
So, barring the example that you gave of Apple, which is both first and best in class,
yes.
There are several other examples that would be first and yet somehow outcompeted. I'm basically getting the idea that to be second in the market means that you would have already educated customers in the marketplace who might be looking for an alternative to the first on the market.
You already know how the market's going to respond. The market research has been done as well.
So you do know that people are already interested in the service or product and that they would actually shell out money for it. It's not just hypothetical. That's nice.
And also, because you don't have to do all of that legwork that the first guys did, you're going to have more money, right?
You should have a little bit more flexibility with your startup capital if you don't have to do all of those things. That's
right.
True.
And you can put that toward marketing. Ding, ding, ding. And marketing is a big reason why these second companies are the ones that are successful. So you're asking for different examples, Diana.
Yeah.
VCRs. Not just any VCR, but the battle between Beta and VHS. Dun, dun, dun. Well, to give you guys a little bit of a history, Beta came out in 1975, invented by Sony. It was the first time you could record your home programming on your television, at home, on a box, on a tape, without having really specialized equipment.
Oh, yeah.
It was like very high quality. That was Beta's thing, Sony's thing. It wanted to make sure that these were very, very high quality tapes. As a result, they didn't record very much. The first ones only recorded about an hour.
Ugh.
And then 2 years later in 77, in comes JVC with their VHS format. And VHS could record longer. It was a bigger, bulkier tape. VHS machines weren't as good. The quality wasn't as good. Anybody who recorded multiple movies on the same tape, remember that you could see like the first movie under the second movie.
The ghost of what was taped before. That's
right?
True.
The thing is, people were more interested, ultimately, in being able to set their VCR to record and put in a tape and go make dinner or go out or do whatever and not have to change out a tape to get the second half of the movie.
Because how many movies are less than an hour?
Beta eventually made their tapes longer. I remember you could record about 4.5 hours on a Beta, but you could record 6 on a VHS. That's 6 Star Trek episodes with commercials
that you can fast forward through.
And then they came out with the 8-hour tape. And by this point, the only people who had Beta were those of us that, those machines didn't die.
That's true.
They were so good quality.
I still have one. It still works.
Point being, Beta is obviously superior quality. Anybody who had that old Beta VCR that they were just waiting to die knows that it was superior quality, but VHS, second on the market, won the battle. There are so many case studies. You can go look this up about why did VHS beat out Beta. And there are so many theories. Everything from better marketing. Hey, they did have better marketing, better licensing agreements. Sony pretty much had proprietary ownership over Beta. They tried to do some licensing agreements and it just didn't work out well. JVC was a little bit more successful in that. There's even a theory that it had to do with porn because porn houses started recording on VHS tapes.
But nobody would buy it if it was under 6 hours?
I'm just telling you what the theories are, Diana. I don't make these rules.
I'll have to think about that.
You can do your own investigation.
Get back to us in the comments if you have any idea what this has to do with the porn industry. No links.
Point being, the second guy won. That means that you, too, can be the VHS of your industry. You don't have to necessarily be higher quality. You just have to be better at understanding what the consumer wants and getting it into their hands. Beta is no more. Not exactly like there's VHS tapes on every corner either, but you could actually buy Beta tapes up until about 10 years ago because they still were very popular amongst film connoisseurs. But that's not exactly the market that Beta was going for. They wanted to be in everybody's house, and
They certainly were not. No.
On today's exercise, because we have an exercise on every single episode.
That's kind of a little bit of the point.
Today, you're going to get out something to write on.
Trusty phone.
You can write it on your phone. That works. Here's what you're going to do. I want you to think of 3 brand spanking new technologies. All right. If you're in the tech startup world, you probably have some friends that are doing some things. Maybe you're working in an incubator. You might have a buddy who's an early adopter, or maybe you like to peruse Kickstarter. Whatever the case, I know that you've seen 3 things within the last 6 months that you're like, damn, I never thought of that.
One of my favorite things that I ever bought on Kickstarter was an electrified spoon. Right? Who thought of that? It's because the sodium channels in your tongue open up with electricity as well as salt. And so therefore, your food tastes saltier if you eat it with an electrical current attached to it. And so the spoon was deliberately so that when you ate soup or curry or any kind of sauce, the points would connect between your fingers and the liquid in your mouth. Almost like holding a 9-volt battery on your tongue. Except you can't feel it, but it does taste saltier. It was one of the most ingenious things I've ever heard of. Does anybody else make it? Not yet. Who doesn't need to reduce their sodium?
That's brilliant. Actually, here's another one. I worked on the Tooth Tunes patent. If you don't remember Tooth Tunes, it's been discontinued. But this was in the early aughts. It's a toothbrush, and the idea was it would play a tune, but it'd be very, very quiet. But as you're brushing your teeth, it would vibrate through your jawbone, which is connected to your ear bone, and you would hear the song playing, and the prototype that I was given played Who Let the Dogs Out.
Only one song. Every time you brush your teeth, you'll never get tired of that.
But the idea is it would help kids know how long to brush their teeth, because they would listen to the whole song.
And it's fascinating. You can't stop brushing or you can't hear the song.
So I want you to come up with 3 of these ideas. Diana and I just gave you 2, but you can't use those.
If you don't have any friends who are doing anything earth-shaking right now, get on Kickstarter and find some.
Look around, see what's out there. Now, as you know, there's always a second part to this exercise.
Part 2.
For every one of those 3 things that you wrote down, think of what's wrong with it. What would prevent you from purchasing it? Now, this could be anything. It could be the price. It could be because it just doesn't appeal to you. It could be because you don't like the color. Or it could be because you really are turned off by the idea of putting a 9-volt battery in your mouth and it scares you. So think of the reasons that would prevent you from purchasing it, and then think about how, if it were your product, and you were both the producer and the consumer, how you would modify it to make it something appealing. Now, as we know, nothing is developed in a vacuum, so that's why we've got comments below. We would love to hear what you found and how you feel like you would improve it. Also, here's another thing you can write down there in those comments. Talk about your own competitor, the closest competitor you have, and think about what you think needs to be improved upon your competitor's product. Because theoretically, that's what you're doing with your product to make it better.
That's true. In a free market, anybody can make any product as long as it doesn't violate copyright or patent law, etc.
Subscribe, because we are going to have a lot of episodes on IP law. We are not lawyers, but we know a thing or two. We can at least tell you what not to do. As Diana said, you can pretty much create anything as long as you're not violating any IP. You can look at a competitor's product and say, well, gosh, that would be great if X, Y, and Z, and then go do X, Y, and Z. And there's all sorts of creative ways that you can work with this. Maybe instead of creating your own product, you go to the manufacturer and say, hey, I have an enhancement I can license to you. I mean, there are so many options out there. But right now, what you should do is think about what your competitor has that you have that's better, and write down in the comments, if you feel comfortable with it, what you think is wrong with your competitor's product. And we can get an idea from the community if they agree. So entrepreneurs, we hope this was inspirational.
Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is a whole course of workshops. We've only given you a couple minutes of content here, but guess what? There's more to come. And go forth and be successful.